Hey Jay.
Hey, Fred, how are you?
Buddy, how are you?
Oh man, wish I could say I'm doing okay, bro. Uh, I wish I could say I'm doing all right, but I'm not.
Crazy stuff times, to say the least.
Hey, Paul.
Hey, how are you?
Huh. It's a hard week, Paul.
Oh, I know.
Fred, man, thank you for joining us.
No.
I got somebody else trying to join. I think they're having a little trouble.
John Gutierrez.
Yeah.
Are you there, John?
Yes, I'm on. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Oh, there he goes. Okay.
How are you?
Have you got video?
Yes, I have video and audio.
Click your video camera. We can't see you.
Okay. Can you see me now?
There you are.
All
There we
right.
go.
John, welcome.
Thank you.
Oh, man. Wow. So this is just going to kind of be a rolling thing, and Paul and I are co-hosting it, and Paul's the executive director of the Fellowship of Christian Peace Officers, and I'm just a guy trying to make some sense of the world.
Alrighty.
Normally, I'm just, the guy that's got the smile in the room. But right before I came on, I just had to let out these primal screams that I'm sure everybody in the neighborhood is wondering if I'm okay. And I'm not, guys. I know your jobs are thankless. And I know enough people in the law enforcement community on a personal level to know the pain that comes with the job. But as a Black man in America, I can't take off this uniform that I wear, and it's too much sometimes. And I don't let anybody see this side of me except for my wife usually, but we got to keep it real right now. And I just, I called Paul and asked him if he thought it was a good idea, and he immediately said yes. And I just in talking with so many people who need to hear from you guys, I just wanted to give you guys an opportunity to let them know that you love them, that what happened to George Floyd was wrong, to see if we can get on the same page on a deeper level to change things, because we still got this divide, with no matter how much people talk about wanting to make things better, it's still police on one side of the room and community members on the other. Every time we do a workshop to bring people together, if there's two stairways, literally cops go up one side of the stairway and the rest of the community goes up the other. And they don't mix until we tell them to, until we physically separate them and move them in their chairs and that stuff's gotta end. And George Floyd's death broke my neck. I need you guys to help me out because we got to go deeper with this work that we're doing. We got to really mean it. It can't be a program. It can't be some thing that we put in as a line item on a budget or a box that we check. We can't have a police department with 3 people designated as community service officers, and they're the only ones that show up at all the community events, because people see through that shit, and that's got to change. I had a guy from the Santa Monica PD come to my house last night. He was on a call. He texted me, said, "Can I swing by?" This is a guy that when I was going through the community police academy program with my wife, he came in and he talked about terrorism. He never mentioned white terrorists. He only mentioned Middle Eastern. He only mentioned black and brown. And I called him out on it in the session. And he was defensive about it. And I don't know, a week or 2 later, I reached out to him. I said, "Look, I think we should talk about this whole terrorism thing and what happened in the class." And he didn't want to. He really didn't want to get together with me and talk. He was afraid of the conversation. Finally, after some urging, he agreed to sit down with me along with his pastor. So there was a kind of a buffer there. We had breakfast together. And everything changed. And literally that day we became dear friends, brothers. He called me. He came over to the house last night. No agenda, just other than just 2 brothers trying to make sense of what's happening. Normally, we don't allow things to get that far where we can develop a real relationship, where normally it would have just ended with that very uncomfortable conversation in the police department, and he would have gone his way and I would have gone mine, and we'd have both been kind of pissed off at each other. And but we challenged ourselves to have the real conversation that needed to take place and do the real work. And since then, we had to bury a police officer here who lost his life in a swimming accident. Friend of mine, friend of his. Both of us served in the military. So did Doug. He won't mind me saying his name. He's in our Love Is the Answer book. He has a beautiful story in there. He tells it like it is. But we had to bury this mutual friend of ours. And in the church, for this man's funeral, it was police on one side, everybody else on the other. We got to come together. I'm committed to this work. I'm going to do this until the day I die. I just hope that my death doesn't come with some man's knee on my neck in the street. I'll do anything it takes to make things better. That's in my DNA. That's why I served my country. That's why I took the oath. That's why I continue to live it out. Just need some help from you guys. There's 18,000 police departments in the United States, and we got 4 people on this. I'm thankful that you're here, but we got a lot of work to do. Paul. I love you, man. Take it from
Let you vent. I'm letting you go. I'm letting you go. I mean, there's four of us here, and AJ, me and you, we've spent many long hours on the phone and even together, and there's nothing that's going to separate us. You know me and I know you, and this is what can happen if people just get to know each other. It's not rocket science. It's just not rocket science. But everybody has to make the effort. And, and of course, you know me, AJ, I'm not going to say everybody. I'm going to say if you're a follower of Jesus Christ, it is your obligation to know your brothers and sisters in Christ. And I don't care what they look like, period, because we're family. And we have Christ in common. And that is the biggest denominator right there. We need to be standing together as the church. We don't have to have badges. We don't have to have color, pastors, the church needs to be standing together. With one message, racism is wrong. It has been wrong since the beginning of time, and it's still wrong today. Will it ever get fixed? Probably not like we'd like to see it, but as a body of believers, we need to be able to say, it's wrong. It is wrong. And we're going to call it out when it pops up. It's just wrong. And we've got to be able to call out things on all sides, standing together. Just like what happened in Minneapolis, that's wrong. Man, it crushes me. It breaks my heart because we've got a dead man. We've got a family that's lost a husband, a father, a son, whatever he is to the family, they've lost him. And we've got 4 cops and their families who are ruined. Now, there's devastation all over the place. And then now we have the riots, and, we've got cops all over this country going, this is wrong. But here it comes. And I go, why are we, the church, not standing there going, that was wrong, Minneapolis, and Minneapolis citizens, that's wrong. Stop. Those 2 wrongs don't make a right. They do not make a right. But the church is silent. And, I'm really not mad at the church. It's just, church, wake up. Read your Bible. Do what it says. That's not hard either. James 1:22 says, don't merely listen to the word and so deceive yourselves. Do what it says. Do that. Do that. And then we can come together. But that's where I come from. I'll revert back to it every single time. And if anybody else wants to come along, that's great. But no, it's the church's responsibility, I think, 100%.
I completely agree. John Gutierrez here. And AJ, I want to say that your emotions is applauded. We do have to sometimes let the community and let our peers know that we are human and we take it personal because we care. So I definitely commend you. I commend everyone that's on the call for their leadership. And we know that John Maxwell says that everything rises and falls on leadership. Yeah. And so it may be 4 of us, but I'd rather have 4 people who are committed to moving this ball forward, and others will get on board. You're right. What has happened over the last couple of days is definitely a tragedy in every direction. It's a tragedy, as mentioned, for the community, for the family, for the officers involved, for a city that's been trying to cope with COVID-19, and then the financial impact of COVID-19. And so the real answer is, when will it stop? And what could we do about it to bring that about? I do believe, I heard you mentioned, AJ, that um, you know the there's only four of us. I'm sorry, you mentioned that there was only
5 now.
Ah,
you're five now. You mentioned that there was three officers, let's say, or two officers in a police department that's doing community relations. And I agree. Every police officer that takes that oath should be a community relations officer, so to speak. That's our job. It's what we do. Our job is to, co-police the community with the community, not to be an occupying force, not to come in and save the day. We don't always know what's best for the community unless we sit there, work together with them, and be able to come up with a solution together that would allow us to address the problems in that particular part of the community. The other thing I'll say is that I agree. I've been to enough events where I've seen the police on one side and I've seen civilian or community on the other side. And so when I go to events, I particularly try not to sit with our peers in the law enforcement community. I try to get out, sit on the other side, meet some new people, have a discussion with them, and I generally do. And when I'm finished talking to them, they're like, "Wow, is every police officer like you?" And I wish they would be, and I'm sure they are. But we have to break out of that shell of being, just amongst ourselves, if that makes any sense. Because I'm sure there's a lot of decent police officers who basically are disgusted by what they saw. It doesn't represent them. But at the end of the day, unless we start forging those relationships, unless we start branching off and meeting people and having that discussion and that dialogue, the community's never going to know what we see, what we really feel and what we believe. And then we're never going to get past this hump. So I truly, honestly believe that the community wants better. I agree with what I heard about our faith-based community have to get involved. And I'm not sure how much involvement they were. I was up all night working myself, but I thought it was really important when I saw your invitation to try to lend my voice with your voice and those gathered here, because it's important. We don't heal a nation overnight, but we definitely won't heal a nation or a city or a community if we don't have a discussion, if we don't sacrifice something for the greater good.
Amen. I thank you, John. Hey, I know you guys, but we are going to put this up, and other people won't know who you are. So could you say where you are and what agency you work with and all that?
Absolutely. So John Gutierrez, I'm a sergeant with the San Bernardino City School Police Department. I work in San Bernardino, California. Our jurisdiction spans over 109 square miles, and we have a great community. There's all kind of stories about San Bernardino, I'm sure, but to me, there's no, it's a great community. It has good people in it, but it also has its own challenges as well. And so I think we have to stop viewing communities as just, a city or a place with challenges, and start talking and highlighting the good things about the city and the community, and still work on those challenges to make it even better. But that's where I work. I spent the vast majority of my career working in Los Angeles. I came out here on a promotion, and so I work under the leadership of Chief Joseph Polino, and he's a phenomenal leader. And in fact, I got to make sure that he gets on your next show for you guys, and he can offer some great insight as well.
It's Monday. Monday's the
Sorry.
next. Oh,
Yeah.
Monday is the next show.
All right, absolutely.
Same time.
Okay.
Yeah, more like a family meeting than a show.
Mm-hmm. And that's okay. I mean, people are watching your podcast. They're watching the show, and that's how we learn, right? That's how we grow. That's how we connect. Some people are just shy. They won't break out of the shell, but something we say, or you may say, they will take that and share that information, and that's how we become better. But if we keep everything in a shell, then no one's going to get better.
Yeah. Well, John, I appreciate you, man. Thank you for for coming on and being with us.
I really thank you guys. I mean, it takes a lot of courageous person to do what you guys are doing and lend your voice. It's a powerful voice, and I'm just glad that you guys were able to let me come in here and see what's going on and say a few words. Really just learn, actually.
That's why I'm here, brother.
Mm-hmm.
Fred,
My name is Fred Herron. I'm the director with the Ben Salem Township Police Department, which is in Bucks County, Pennsylvania. And if you probably have no idea where that is, we touch Philadelphia on the north. So we border numerous sides of the city of Philadelphia, which is the fifth largest city in the United States. So, and they're a great neighbor, the city of Philadelphia. And I'm originally from New York City, relocated here to Ben Salem some years ago. And I've been the director, or the equivalent to the chief, for the last 14 years. And I had the great pleasure of being connected with AJ. COVID has really thrown off my timing, but we were really rolling nicely with Walking While Black, Love is the Answer. And then, of course, COVID came and shut it all down. But maybe, AJ, we could figure out a Zoom way to start that up somehow. Because who knows when we're going to have large gatherings again. But that was it's a great story and a great program that AJ's put together, and it really got our community, talking about that whole issue. But we've been doing it for years. I will say, I came on the job in 1987, and in the 1990s, when Bill Clinton became president of the United States, Bill Clinton really pushed the old model of community policing. It's been around since the 1870s, but the birth of the first police department. But Bill Clinton, I think, really gets credit for bringing it back to life. And you're right, AJ. Crime prevention, community policing, community relations is not a three-person job. For us, we're 106 sworn, which for John, that might be a little small, but in Pennsylvania, there's 1,200 police departments, and most of them have, over 50% of them have less than 10 officers. So we're the 9th largest police department in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. All 106 officers, and I'm not just saying it as a tagline, but it's a truthful way we do business here, is a philosophy that everybody's involved in community relations. From the officers, 33% of my officers donate their time working with. We have the only PAL, Police Athletic League, in the county, reaching out to 1,200 kids that can't afford to join other paid sports leagues, Little League and stuff like that. So we've got so many things going on, and then you've got this craziness that happened, and I just can't get my arms around it for the life of me. I just did, in my command staff and we were talking this morning. I woke up, I was woken up at 5 o'clock for something else, but then on my way in, I heard some officers signing out, waiting for our graffiti removal truck to come out to some locations, and it had George Floyd written over it. Now, we're a long way off from Minneapolis. We're a long way off from that city, but, people are upset, and I certainly understand why, as much as I can understand. But to have your knee on someone's neck for 7 minutes, I just don't get it. And we have to break this cycle. We have to get an understanding, and we have to continue to work hard to weed out the bad apples. And I don't know all the details. I probably know just as much of you or little. But from what I'm told, there were signs that this guy was a problem, the officer. So I don't understand, how that continues. I also don't understand, and there was I don't know if it was Fox or CNN, as I switched back and forth, a civil rights attorney. The guy was right on the money with his looking at the situation, but an arrest could be made. A local, arrest could have been made, and that may have helped a lot of this, as far as simmered people down, and at least people see the justice system is moving and working. I believe an arrest will be made, but it's taking too long. But we do. AJ, you're right on the money. We've got to find a better way. We've got to get some major organizations, whether it's organizations like the NAACP and the IACP, and bringing these groups together to get this message out. Because I think In 34 years, going on my 34th year, I've seen a lot of different platforms, a lot of different messages, but AJ, yours is one of the, is that definitely in the top 5. And we've got to keep that going. The title alone says it all. And I don't know, AJ, I think that the Zoom was promoted as Walking While Black Love is the Answer. So we got to keep that going. We've got to get that word out. I know our district attorney, Matt Weintraub, AJ is committed to this initiative. And like I said, COVID, we were moving, we had some traction, and COVID broke that for us. But we'll get it back. We're going to get it back, and we're going to keep it going. And this morning at a decent hour, I waited until about 9 o'clock. I don't know her schedule, but the president of the Bucks County NAACP, I immediately reached out to her. And what can I do for you? What do you need from me? We want to make people, because people are generally very comfortable and secure in Bucks County. We, again, there's 800 police officers. To say that something doesn't happen somewhere would be ignorant of me. But we have a good handle on things, and we have a great open dialogue with our chapters of different groups, especially the NAACP. So my call, and she said, we were just meeting, and this is great that you called, and I appreciate it. And I said, Karen, you could call me at 3 o'clock in the morning. You know that. I don't care. But I wanted to reach out to you this morning, and we talked for about close to a half hour. And I said, whatever way we can get people together, whether it's Zoom or whatever. I bought a Zoom account for 100 people, so whatever it is, we'll do it. And you got to keep the conversation going, and everybody here knows this. And I see we got 7 popped on, so we're almost doubled where we were 20 minutes ago. Yeah, so that's a good thing. That's a good thing, and we got to get more people and get that conversation going. But I'll keep talking for another hour, so I'm going to stop. But AJ, thanks for the invite.
Well, Fred, I appreciate you, man, and please say hi to Matt next time you see him. I'd say give him a hug, but I know that'll have to wait for a little while.
The governor will get mad at me.
Yeah. But yeah, you guys have really done some amazing things there in Bucks County, and I really wish I could be there, with you and soon. We'll make that happen, because you guys have shown the film. You guys have gone deeper with discussions, and you live it out. I know your hearts are, right where they need to be. And I'm thankful for you guys. You give me strength, some days it's hard to keep going, brother. Some days it's just like too much. And this week has been probably the worst since I started doing this stuff 8 years ago. I know Omar's here, Eric's here. Thank you guys, Milo, for coming. Charles, you've been on for a little bit, brother, so I want to give you a chance to speak, and then we'll go to Omar and Milo. You're muted, Charles. Let me see if I can help you. There you go.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah. Yep. You're good.
Hey, thanks, man. It was really by chance that I happened to see the invite, man. I've just been in Zoom nightmare. Going from Zoom meeting to Zoom meeting. In fact, I attended a RIPA, Racial and Identity Profile Advisory Committee meeting yesterday, and we're really good at creating a lot of training. But by way of background, I was with LAPD for 31 years, and did a lot of, had a great fun there, great career. And then I've been at California Post now for 14 years. I'm going to retire hopefully at the end of August.
No, man, don't leave anytime soon. You stay there for a little while longer.
It's really been interesting because, these commissions across the country are really important because we drive training information. And so one of the things that really strikes me about our current situation is that for years, of course, law enforcement is usually based upon policies, procedures, rules, and regulations. And because, we're so identified with that rigidity and the value rigidity there, we can't see outside of how we've been value programmed. And so I know that for me, many years, it was always a challenge between, education and indoctrination. And so law enforcement by and large is cognitive scaffold around indoctrination. I really find it interesting that so many law enforcement or people from the community join law enforcement and they get emotionally hijacked. It's like they had a lobotomy. They lost their mind and they almost lose their sense of empathy. And I think we see that nowadays, and so I think that a few years ago, there was a study out of San Diego, Robert Andar and Dr. Vince Folletti. They call it Adverse Childhood Experiences Study. You may have heard about that. And they took a look at how our childhood and lifetime experiences impact our critical decision-making currently. And, so a lot of our law enforcement officers come from straight from high school, or they come from another kind of job where they have a different mission and values, and they come into this enormous, highly complex world of law enforcement, which I think we should change the name from law enforcement, maybe to civic policing. Because isn't it interesting how that if you ask a person in law enforcement what their job is, they'll probably say, well, I'm in law enforcement. Actually, no, you're in public service, community policing. But law enforcement is only one small spectrum of the many things that we do. Probably less than 10%, maybe 5% of what we do is about enforcement. The rest of it is probably about social justice. And so I think what we need to do is reframe the language because it's driving our behavior. And so I think that, when we began to mobilize what you're doing, AJ, the community of civic leaders, servant leaders, I think it's important to tap into that brain trust because we will never be able to mitigate the unconscious bias that's taking place in our organizations and dominating behaviors. And so we have to have greater feedback. That's why I think what's happening, you take a look at the full spectrum of our dialogue. I think the former speaker, we were talking about having a better discussion. Well, there's a big difference between dialogue and discussion. The word discussion comes out of a Latin phrase, which means percussion. It means to beat you down. And oftentimes, we're beating each other's down in our linguistic patterns. And I think we need to back up off of that, maybe just an inch or so we can have a wider perspective. And so we have to clean up the language. I think we have to clean up the value program. We have to mitigate the bias that we have because we've scaled the bias. And so what we saw that officer do with that citizen putting his knee on his neck, no academy in the nation teaches that. So he was coming from a different perspective. I think we need to drill down and maybe take a look at some of the neuro leadership concepts or a complex adaptive system so we can have a better perspective about how to engage in problem solving.
Agreed.
Yeah. Thank you, brother. I'm glad you're in the role that you're in, and I really hope you rethink that whole retirement thing.
Okay.
Would any of you guys who have spoken already, and Omar, I will bring you on in a second, bro. Would any of you like to say, anything to the Floyd family, his friends?
Yeah, I'll start. For myself, and I echo this from my law enforcement agency and every other good law enforcement agency that's out there actually trying to do the right thing and trying to implement and follow the 21st century policing model, that we apologize. I apologize. What occurred shouldn't have occurred. It's unacceptable. It shouldn't be tolerated. We're not going to tolerate it. And I think that's why you see the 18,000 police agencies unanimously standing up against this type of behavior. And they're revisiting discussions within the police department, policy. And again, I apologize. I wouldn't want that for my family. I don't want it for anyone in the community that I serve, and their family definitely don't deserve that. And so I just humbly apologize. My heart goes out to the family. They'll be in my prayers in the days ahead, because it's going to be a rough road, but we're paying attention to make sure that the right things are being done. And I know the leadership there at that department is going to do the right thing. They're trying to do the right thing. There's some temporary distractions when we have, folks who are angered, and rightfully so. But when they're also creating destruction and violence, that creates a little bit of a delay in some of the things that they really would like to do a lot faster, to show that they're not going to tolerate it. So again, I do apologize, and I'm sure I echo that from all my colleagues. And if there's any way we can support, we would love to find out how we could support. But right now, our support is to make sure that we're doing the right things, law enforcement wise, to make it right. And that we will never be able to make it right, but to make sure that they understand that this isn't tolerated, because there's other police officers across the nation that are watching. And so I think for them to be able to see how this is handled and how we're moving forward is a huge piece that will send a strong message.
I concur with John. I know no one, nor have I seen anybody on television in law enforcement condone this behavior. This is horrific. We don't want these type of folks in our profession. The 900,000 officers in this country, that are part of the 18,000 departments, the vast, overwhelming 99 point something are good people that take the job for the right reasons. And it sickens us, because this is not what we're about by any stretch of the means. And like anything else, whatever profession it might be, when you have a bad apple that has done such a horrific thing to an individual, and a man pleading for his life, and what did he do? Nothing. No one deserves a death sentence, especially for this type of event. It's just horrific. And I know from us here, in our township here, we just, are outraged, and our condolences go out to that family. And we certainly want, from this moment on, I know it's said every time something happens, never again, but this has to stop, and what those other three were doing, time will tell what was going through their heads. Why? I see the same video that everybody else saw, and how they didn't pull him off, I have no idea. I just don't know. But we're just horrified by the whole matter as well.
Thank you, Fred. I just had some news come in. It looks like Derek Chauvin was taken into custody for George Floyd's death.
Oh, very good.
Yeah, let me see if I can. I'm not very good at this, but I don't know if you can. I don't know if you can.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can see that.
Hey, you did pretty good. That's pretty good technology skills.
I'm just glad I didn't cut you guys off. So, yeah, that just came in. See if I can go back to the normal screen. Stop share.
And I'm sure there'll be more arrests as they continue to move forward. But I would just plead to the community that this is where we have to be better for each other, where we have to pause and work together. Come together in prayer, come together shoulder to shoulder for the common good, and allow, put a cease to the destruction and a cease to the violence and the looting and the burning of property, and allow the officers to move forward and help them move forward. And moving forward with the arrest is great. We want to see that. We also want to see is a conversation, is a relationship, is how we can work together. And that's the things that needs to start happening almost right away. Burning down the police stations, you're just taking away an element that they need to be able to do their jobs, to hold these folks accountable. There's other stations that they can use, but it doesn't do anything for the long haul. So I would just plead to the community to please come together in honor of Floyd. Let's do the right thing. Let's stop the violence. Let's have a dialogue. Let's have a discussion. Let's come up with a plan together. Allow the chief of police there in that city and city leaders to work collaboratively with the community to find common ground and a resolution. And let's begin to make sure that this doesn't happen again. That's the key. We have to we have to keep this at the forefront, because we can't put it in the rearview mirror, because once we think we've arrived, then we failed. But I do believe that there are some areas that we can work together on, and I think we can strengthen our relationships, sustainable relationships.
Yeah.
And I know that in theory, more than 2 or 3 officers are doing community relations, but when you look at it, to have 2 or 3 people assigned sends that message that maybe they're the only 3. So there's a lot of work to be done. And, you know, it starts with me. I pay attention to what's going on around the world, and I have discussions with our team regularly, because I want to make sure that we are also staying at the forefront so that we don't put anything in the rearview mirror. We can't afford to go back to the 1992 riots. We can't afford to go back to the civil unrest prior to the 92 riots. And we certainly can't have any more death. We have to have peace, unity, and respect and love for one another.
You know, since you mentioned that word love, I want to point something out, because I had a friend of mine on Facebook today. He said, you know, love doesn't work. Now's not the time to love. Now's the time to fight. And, you know, offline, I reminded him that I'm not a pacifist, that you know, if someone breaks into my home and tries to harm my wife, then I'm going to take whatever measures I need to make sure that she's safe, you know, because I love her. But this love that we talk about in Love is the Answer, this acronym, it's action steps. And love is a, you know, an action verb that has to be lived out. And so when we talk about that love of learn about people and open your heart to them and volunteer yourself to be part of the solution in their life, and then empower others to do the same, those are powerful things. There's no softness in that. And a lot of times when I'm talking with people in the community about love, or even when I'm talking with cops about love, there's this misconception that love is soft and that we can't have that in our life if we're going to do our job, or if we're going to maintain our credibility in the community. But I'm not talking about that. You know, I served in the military. I was ready to die for my country. I've had guns pointed in my face. I've had death threats over this work. It didn't stop me. And this love that I'm talking about is the hardest thing in the universe. You know, we put this kind of love out there. This don't quit no matter what. Have the tough discussions. Keep going through the fire.
Yeah, I agree.
You know, AJ, I was listening. I would like to hear from Paul and Omar also, but if I would speak to the Floyd family, I would just tell them that, you know, words are inadequate for me to communicate the great sense of sorrow I have in their loss. But for the grace of God, that could have been any of us on this particular panel. And even in the context of, even my great career with law enforcement, I really appreciated it. I've always had the apprehension every time I saw a silhouette of a patrol car equipment behind me, because there's a cultural awareness. And I was like extraordinary as a law enforcement officer, but I always knew that to many officers, you know, I was driving while black. And this is an old story. You know, we can go back to 1619, and that story is a painful story, because it requires a sense of conscious competency and a willingness to accept a past that none of us created. But we feel offended whenever the issue comes up. And so I think that in many ways we're suffering from post-traumatic stress ourselves. And I think we have to take a look at our priorities, our habits, and the systems that we operate in. You know, because it's a system that we're dealing with. You know, because this whole issue of race is actually a created concept. It's not even rooted in biology. And but culture is one's experience and heritage. And we all come into law enforcement with a different experience and a different heritage. And so I think that what we should be doing is actually engage in crucial conversations. I would like to hear from Paul and Omar. And the key is that, you know, whenever we engage in those crucial conversations, there are consequences at the outcome. And so, you know, we go into this before you say something, do you think about the consequences? At one point, you're a field training officer and you're in charge. You go into another meeting on the other side of the wall, you're a sergeant, first line supervisor, and the FTO zips it, right? They don't share their opinion. And then if you're a lieutenant, and you go in a meeting with a captain or a commander, you zip it. It's almost like you disidentify with your integrity. You have something to say in these meetings, but there are consequences to you telling the truth. And so the transparency that we all advocate has some potentially downsides. And so but I would suggest that all of us, consider if we're willing to pay the cost of transparency, because the consequences might be non-promotability, or because someone may take your comments as being a cynic, versus being a skeptic. Most of the times that we criticize a system where we're branded as being a cynic. No, we're just a skeptic. We're asking a question. We're not trying to undermine anything. And then once you get that jacket, you can't drop it. I mean, once you get a jacket, if you've ever had a jacket, how did you get rid of a bad reputation undeserved? And so I'm thinking that we're better than that. And so that's why I'm interested in listening to. I want to hear what Paul and Omar say, because, looking at you, I see that you've been on the road. You're a long distance runner also. So you've been around for a while. So I'll be interested in hearing what you have to say, because I think we can bring some coherence to this whole fragmented experience that we're having. But it is an old story. It's a contemporary story. It's been with us for so long, painful. So yeah, I would like to hear some of the comments of our colleagues.
Well, thank you, Charles, for what you said. And, you've been around a little bit too.
Yeah, I have been around.
But let me jump back real fast to the Floyd family. I want to apologize to the Floyd family. And I think I can do this, even though I'm retired, for my old department in Chattanooga and for the county sheriff's department that we're in the county of Hamilton here, because both of their chiefs have come out publicly and renounced what happened, said it was wrong. It was totally, totally wrong. And it kind of, it kind of swelled my chest up a little bit. One, when I saw that they did it, but two, when I saw a lot of their command staff coming in behind them and agreeing with them. And, I hope I say this right. Like you was talking about, Charles, there, the consequences. We know from being on the inside, there's a lot of good cops, and they keep their mouths shut, because of the consequences. And AJ, kind of back to what you and I've talked about, it's a shame, when God has to use a tragedy to wake people up. But what I'm seeing is all of a sudden the silent folks are not silent anymore. It was like, this is the straw that broke the camel's back, and they're not going to stand for it. And, what we're doing here, I think, is so important, because we don't want this to die out. We let's keep this going. This is a good start, but we can't just, okay, well, they've arrested him, and okay, now let's go back. We can't go back, because that's a problem. We keep going back. We take a big step, and okay, we've renounced it. We know it's wrong. We've identified it as wrong. The guy's been arrested. Okay, we can't stop. We can't stop now. So we've got to influence leaders, to influence their subordinates to go in and to do the right thing, and empower them with the ability to do the right thing, that it's okay. It's not stigmatized. We have got to do the right thing. There was a police chaplain in Denver, Colorado, and I won't use his name because I hadn't asked him. But he and I were talking. He's African American, and was a police officer in Denver, and he was also a pastor in Denver. So when a lot of our previous problems, were breaking out, between police and the community, as a police officer, he went, to his young people in his church. What do you want? Speaking as a police officer. We're trying to do everything right. What is it that you want? Why do you keep being mad? And from the lips of a child, it was so simple. They said, the police are supposed to be the example. We're supposed to be the example. And if we really believe that God has ordained this position in government, then we need to be doing it cleaner and better than everybody else out there, because we're not only an example to the public, but we're also an ambassador for Christ, just cleverly disguised as a police officer.
Hey, Jay, can I ask one question of Paul? And so, Paul, you're correct. We can't go back, but what we do need to have is retrospective coherence.
Mm-hmm.
We have to be able to look back and contextualize the historical impact on today's contemporary activities. So my question to you would be, what do you think are the unarticulated needs of the community that we should be addressing?
Of the community?
The unarticulated ones, yes.
Oh, goodness. Well, the first thing we need to talk about is the relationship between the police and the community. And I think it needs to be an honest conversation or dialogue where the community can speak, and we have got to sit back and try to understand where the community's coming from. I mean, AJ and I have had tons of conversations, and my eyes have been open to so much, because it's never happened to me. I don't know what you're talking about.
Okay.
That really happens? I mean, it's the reason it was never an issue with me is because it was a non-issue. I never thought about these things, never had a reason to. But guess what? I got a friend now that has had some problems, and okay, now I've met other guys that have had problems, and I'm not talking about, we want to try to lump people into dope dealers and thugs and gangsters. I'm talking about great, upstanding citizens that have been wrongly treated just because of the color of their skin. We can't go around it. And it's got to stop. And once we start making friends, it kind of goes away. But you've got to slow down. We've got to listen. And that's one thing that Charles, even in my career, I can think back, especially, in the young years, I didn't listen. I ain't got time to listen. I'm here to fix problems. I'm zipping in, I'm fixing this. You do what I say, and yeah, and off I go to another call. Well, I didn't fix nothing. I probably made a bunch of people hate me. Of course, it might have fixed the problem for a moment, because whoever was in the altercation when I got there, they weren't mad at each other no more. They was mad at me together,
That's true.
But we don't listen, and we've just got to stop and listen.
Thank you.
I really don't know what else to say, Charles, because if we're not going to listen, we can't fix nothing.
Yeah, I think
we're the authority. So it's incumbent upon us. Well, let me put it this way. I had a great chief at one time that I was going to a community meeting, and I was a young lieutenant, and I can't really remember what all was going on, but what the community was saying and what the numbers were showing, that there wasn't a match. The community was misguided. It's wrong thinking. I've got the numbers here, and I was talking to the youth about it, and he just sat there, he just listened to me. He let me go. And then he said, Paul, he said, those numbers don't mean a thing to the community. He said, I understand them. You understand them. We know that the problems they're talking about is really not that big of a problem, but the community perceives it as a problem. Therefore, it's a problem. Incumbent upon us, the authority, to listen to them and help fix their problem. And it was like, oh, well, okay. Nobody ever said that to me before. Yeah. But it's incumbent, we're the authority. We're supposed to fix the problems, and that means all of them. We want to whine that, we have to wear this hat, that hat, this hat, that. Okay, we do. We do. And we're not going to get paid for it, but we do. So let's just wear it. And whatever hat we need to put on, we put that hat on and we deal. And then we move on.
Hey,
thanks, Paul. That was helpful. Thank you.
Hey, Fred has to go in a moment, so I want to let him jump in and say goodbye, and then Omar, we'll have you come on up.
I'm sorry. Yeah, this was, as everybody knows, was the last minute email that we got for this. So I have another 2 o'clock, but you're gonna post this, AJ. So I'd like to hear Omar and Eric, but will I be able to see this later?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Take care, everyone, and we just got to keep working.
Yeah, Fred. Thank you, brother.
Yeah, take care.
All right. I'm sorry I had to run.
That's all right. Thank you, man.
Yeah, thank you.
Omar, brother, welcome. Thanks for being so patient. Eric, we're gonna get you on in a little bit too, man. I know you just sit there and meditate, brother. I know you're good with that.
Hey, AJ, and to all who have assembled here today, I'm appreciative to be here, but I have mixed emotions. As you know, being an African-American male, there is a deep sense of sorrow that I feel that is inarticulable. I can't use words to describe how I feel. It's deeper than my language can articulate. And I'm also a bit concerned that we have these circular conversations around policing and the African-American community. And it's oftentimes sparked by incidents like what happened to Mr. Floyd. However, the problems of policing in the Black community is much deeper than Mr. Floyd. It is systemic. And there should not be any kind of, accolades given to people for seeing a film or a video of a murder and acknowledging it is a murder. I mean, to me, that's not a big jump for somebody to say it's a murder. It's a murder. You don't have to be a police officer. Let me digress for a minute. I'm a former police officer. I'm the former mayor of the city of Tuskegee, Alabama. So I've sat in not only the seat of being a police officer, but also being over city. And I recognize that it's hard being in both spaces. But I do understand that the reason why we're having these conversations is because of a word that we don't like to talk about, which is racism. And if you don't understand racism, then anything else you think you understand will only serve to confuse you. And I think it's important that we look at the fact that this man's humanity was not recognized. It's not what he did. It's the fact that his humanity was not, acknowledged to the point of preserving his life, even to the point of getting through a trial. There was an arrest, a conviction, and execution within a matter of minutes. And until we began to understand that the fundamental reason why many of the challenges we experience between law enforcement is the lack of appreciation for the humanity of people of color. Now, it's as much as I love Paul and I know Paul is, we don't have the same problems with white people in police as we do with Black folk in police. So it doesn't mean that police don't know how to treat people. They just don't know how to treat Black people the way that they should. And this kind of aversion to learning a new way, appreciating a new way from law enforcement leadership it also lets me know that they're comfortable in that should make them uncomfortable. That they continue to avoid community policing training and make it a requirement for their departments. They don't work with de-escalation. If they have 2 hours of it, that's about all they do. They don't understand cultural sensitivity. They don't understand how to communicate with people. They don't understand implicit bias. And until we understand those fundamental issues and how they intersect with our thinking and with law enforcement, we will continue to have these circular conversations. And so I'm in a space where I'm tired of talking, because I know that that this is just an activity and futility if nothing changes. That we will get selective amnesia and we will go back to what we've always done. And we know that insanity is doing the same thing repeatedly and expecting a different result. Until we, select people who understand and can appreciate life as law enforcement officers. Don't, as Charles was saying, don't create a kind of lobotomy for them by taking away their souls in the training process and getting them to understand that you are not a law enforcement officer, but you are there to serve people, all people, equally and fairly and equitably, and uphold the Constitution of the United States for all people. Until we get to that space, then we will be here again and again and again. And so the conversation that we have is good. I'm glad that we're having it. But if it does not translate into policy, if it does not translate into different training, if it does not translate into criteria that forces these departments into assessing implicit bias before a person is hired, and then help them, even if they have it, because we all have implicit bias, but help them mitigate it and understand it and arrest it when they're dealing with people who they may have some differences or bias towards. Until we do that, then we'll be back here again. And let me say this lastly. Leadership is critically important here. And when people express themselves through destruction of property, it's Dr. King that says, this is the language of the unheard. When people are angry, they don't know what else to do but to destroy something. It is a reaction that many people have. But let me share with you how I feel about this. When the Michigan governor wanted to protect lives through shutting down activities in terms of COVID-19, people were able to take their automatic weapons to the State House and protest and to contest and to protest her statement. But when a multicultural group of people, because this was not just Black people, but a multicultural group of people go and to express their heartfelt pain for the assassination, the murder of a citizen, we call them thugs. And we say to them that when you riot, then we should kill you. That's coming from your top level leadership. That is not leadership at all. What it does, it incites others to even do more. This is an inflection point. This is a watershed moment. This is one of those moments, this tipping points, that if we don't ratchet back, if we don't really come up with real systemic issues and systemic solutions to what we're talking about, there is a point of no return. I just hope that we don't reach it.